Rogers Communications is a Canadian communications and media company. It operates particularly in the field of wireless communications, cable television, telephone, and Internet connectivity with significant additional telecommunications and mass media assets. The company is headquartered in Toronto, Ontario. The company claims the heritage of the Rogers Vacuum Tube Company, founded in 1925 by Edward Rogers, which started the CFRB radio station in Toronto, which was later acquired by outside interests. The present enterprise dates to 1960, when Rogers' son, Ted Rogers, founded Rogers Radio Broadcasting Limited. That company acquired CFRB that year, as well as Aldid Rogers Broadcasting, a partnership with Joel Aldid which helped launch CFDO in 1961. Rogers later bought out Aldid and started the current cable and wireless operations, known as Rogers Cable Systems Limited. The chief competitor to the company is Bell Canada, which has a similarly extensive portfolio of radio and television media assets, as well as wireless television distribution and telephone services, particularly in eastern and central Canada. The two companies are often seen as having a duopoly on communication services in the regions, as both companies own a stake of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. However, the company also competes nationally with TELUS for wireless services, and primarily indirectly with Shaw Communications for television service. However, Rogers and Shaw have since launched an online movie and television streaming service called Show Me History. In 1925, Rogers Sr. invented the world's first alternating current heater filament cathode for a radio tube, which then enabled radios to be powered by ordinary transformer-coupled household electric current. This was a breakthrough in the technology and became a key factor in popularizing radio reception. After this invention, radios became far more commonplace in the world. The All-American 5 is an example of a vacuum tube radio that utilized 5 tubes with heater filaments series connected to produce a total AC voltage demand that matched the 120 volts AC supplied at the wall socket. No power transformers were needed in these radios. In 1931, Rogers Sr. was awarded an experimental television license in Canada. He was working on radar when, on May 6, 1939, he died suddenly due to complications of a hemorrhage. He was 38 years old. He left a widow, Velma, and a 5-year-old son, Edward. While his business interests were sold, his son later determined to carry on his father's business. Entry to broadcasting. While Ted Rogers was an articling student with Tory des Lauriers and Amp Binnington, he started Rogers Radio Broadcasting Limited, which acquired Canada's pioneer FM station, CFRB. In 1962, he pioneered stereo broadcasting in FM with CFRB and also founded CFDR in Toronto, by making available FM radios to boost FM penetration, which was only at 3% at the time. Ted Rogers was able to make more Canadians aware of FM transmitters. CFRB quickly became one of Canada's most listened to FM radio stations and one of the most popular and profitable FM radio station in Canada. Rogers' interests in radio led him to cable television in the mid-1960s. He wanted Canada's fledgling cable operators to carry CFRB on a spare cable channel, and the more he studied the cable world, the more he became attracted to the potential for programming choices on cable television. He entered the cable business in 1967 1977, and was awarded television licenses for areas in and around Toronto, Brampton and Leamington. In 1974, Rogers Cable Communications expanded past 12 channels, including several multicultural channels. Through a reverse takeover in 1979, Ted Rogers' company, Rogers Cable TV Limited, acquired control of Canadian Cable Systems Limited. In 1980, the company purchased Premier Communications Limited, which almost doubled the number of cable subscribers and made Rogers Communications the largest cable television company in Canada. As a founding shareholder of Rogers Cable Inc., which commenced service in 1985, the company entered the mobile phone market. The company operated national cellular telephone network in Canada in competition with the established telephone companies. Rogers Cable Mobile Communications Inc., which is now called Rogers Wireless, is now a public company, 51% of which is owned by Rogers Communications. Between 1979 and 1982, Rogers Communications acquired and built a number of cable television systems in the United States. In March 1989, the company completed the sale of its U.S. cable television interests for CAD $1.581 billion. In 1986, Rogers Cable Systems changes its name to present as Rogers Communications Inc. This led to Rogers Communications Inc. acquiring 40% of Unitel Communications, formerly CNCP Telecommunications. In September 1989, Unitel was granted permission by the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission in June 1992 to compete with the Canadian telephone monopolies in the long-distance market. In January 1993, 20% of Unitel Communications was sold to It and T Corporation. As a result of this transaction, Rogers Communications Inc. S interest in Unitel was reduced to 32%. In September 1995, Unitel Communications reached an agreement in principle with It and T and certain of its bankers to restructure Unitel. At the close of this transaction, Rogers Communications no longer had an equity investment in Unitel. On March 31, 1994, Rogers Communications Inc. completed an offer for the shares of McLean Hunter, and on December 19, 1994, the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission approved the transaction. The publishing assets of McLean Hunter were subsequently combined with its existing radio and television operations to form Rogers Media Inc. On January 1995, Rogers, along with several other cable companies, added a number of new cable channels under a negative option billing plan. Subscribers opting out of paying for the new channels stood to lose much of their existing specialty channel programming. The participating cable companies were hit by both regulatory and public opinion backlash and ultimately were forced to split the negative option channels into two separately purchasable blocks, a move which Rogers had initially opposed as not technologically feasible. 2000's Rogers Communications Inc. unveiled its new Mobius strip logo on January 17, 2000, marking the departure of its original logo. In 2000, Rogers acquired Cable Atlantic from Newfoundland businessman Danny Williams. The deal, worth $151.8 million, brought Rogers approximately 75,000 subscribers. With the purchase of Cable Atlantic, Rogers scrapped its plan to buy Videotron, which was later purchased by Quebec. The same year, they acquired the Toronto Blue Jays Baseball Club. In 2004, they acquired Skydome, which is the Blue Jays' home venue and largest covered indoor entertainment complex in Canada. The complex was renamed Rogers Centre in February 2005. Also in 2000, Rogers bought the Arena Football League team. the New England Sea Wolves, and after the 2000 season, Rogers moved them to Toronto and renamed the team the Toronto Phantoms. Due to lack of interest and poor ticket sales, the team ceased operations in 2002. In July 2001, Rogers Media acquired CTV Sportsnet and renamed Rogers Sportsnet. In November, the Fan 590 sports radio station joined Rogers Media in August 2001 along with 14 Northern Ontario radio stations. Rogers On Demand was launched as a home video library over cable in February 2002, and in November 2003, Rogers Cable made personal video recorders available to its subscribers. In summer 2004, Rogers partnered with Yahoo to create Rogers Yahoo, which offers Yahoo Premium features to Rogers broadband internet customers. In fall 2004, several strategic transactions were executed that significantly increased Rogers' exposure to the potential of the Canadian wireless market. Rogers acquired the 34% of Rogers Wireless owned by IT and AMP-T Wireless Services Inc. for $1.77 billion. Soon thereafter, Rogers Wireless acquired Microcell Telecommunications Inc., along with its popular Fido brand, which created Canada's largest wireless operator and only GSM provider. In December, Rogers Communications repurchased the shares of Rogers Wireless that were publicly held and proceeded to take the company private, which significantly enhanced the company's operating and financial flexibility. Coinciding with the 20th anniversary of Rogers' launch of wireless services, on July 1, 2005, Rogers' home phone voice-over cable local telephony service was introduced in the Greater Toronto Area and also successfully completed the acquisition of CallNet Enterprises Inc., a national provider of voice and data communication services. In 2007, Rogers entered a tentative deal to purchase the 8-channel stations CKXTV, Access.The, Canadian Learning Television, and SexTV, the channel from Chum Limited, as part of the latter company's pending takeover by CTV Globe Media. This transaction was contingent on CRTC approval of CTV Globe Media's takeover of Chum. However, on June 8, 2007, the CRTC approved the CTV transaction, conditional on CTV divesting itself of City TV rather than a channel, effectively voiding the deal. On June 12, it was announced that Rogers had made a new offer of $375 million for the City TV stations. The transaction was approved on September 28, 2007, the same date when Rogers Park in Brampton, Ontario was officially opened. On June 28, 2007, Rogers further offered to sell the 2 religious licensed Omni stations in Winnipeg and Vancouver as part of the City TV deal, although the company stated that it intended to retain the multilingual licensed Omni stations. On July 7, Rogers also announced a takeover offer for Vancouver's multicultural station CHNM. The transaction was approved on March 31, 2008. In September 2007, Rogers has also applied to the CRTC to acquire 20% of Cable Pulse 24, a local news channel in Toronto which was previously paired with City TV but was retained by CTV Globe Media in the June 8 license approval. However, in early December, CTV withdrew the application and announced that Rogers Media and CTV GM had come to a deal in which Rogers waived the 20% stake. On February 13, 2008, Rogers announced a takeover offer for Aurora Cable, a cable service provider in York Region, Ontario. The sale was finalized on June 12, 2008. On December 2, 2008, Edward S. Rogers died of heart failure. On September 9, 2009, Rogers Cable filed a lawsuit in an attempt to prevent Shaw Cable from acquiring Mountain Cablevision of Hamilton, Ontario, on the basis that Rogers and Shaw had effectively agreed to divide the country in half, Rogers in the east and Shaw in the west. This suit was defeated on competitive grounds and the Shaw acquisition allowed to proceed. In 2012, Rogers Cable filed a complaint in an Ontario court against penalties levied under a Truth in Advertising law, claiming that the amount of the penalties and the requirements imposed by the law are in violation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The company has also had to recognize the rising market trend of customers canceling or foregoing cable television service subscriptions in favor of cheaper alternate content delivery means such as streaming media services like Netflix, a demographic called cord cutters and cord nevers. Quote, in response, Rogers is now acquiring content with a speculated cost of $100 million to begin their own competing online streaming service, ShowMe, much like the American Hulu Plus, in the near future. CEO Guy Lawrence has spoken out about an upcoming change meant to jumpstart growth at the company. Lawrence has not released any specific details, but says that the strategy will help allow the company's telecom and media units to work better together. In the summer of 2014, Rogers reported a 24% drop in profit compared to the previous year's second quarter. Corporate governance. Rogers Communications is traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange and on the New York Stock Exchange under ticker RCI. Following the death of Ted Rogers in 2008, control of Rogers Communications passed to the Rogers Control Trust, a trust for which a subsidiary of Scotiabank serves as trustee. Ted's son Edward Rogers III and daughter Melinda Rogers serve respectively as chair and vice chair of the trust. Current members of the board of directors of Rogers Communications are Alan D. Horn, CA Chairman, Rogers Communications Inc., and President and CEO, Rogers Telecommunications Limited. Guy Lawrence, President and Chief Executive Officer, Rogers Communications Inc. Charles William David Birchall, Vice Chairman, Barrick Gold Corporation. Bonnie Brooks, Vice Chairman, Hudson's Bay Company. Stephen Aaron Birch, Company Director. John H. Clapperson, FCA, Company Director. Thomas I. Hull, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, The Hull Group Inc. Philip B. Lind, CM Vice Chairman, Rogers Communications Inc. John A. MacDonald, Company Director. Isabel Marcoux, Chair of the Board, Transcontinental Inc. The Hon. David Peterson, PCQ.C. Senior Partner, Castles Brocken Amp Blackwell. Edward S. Rogers, Deputy Chairman, Rogers Communications Inc. Loretta A. Rogers, Company Director. Martha L. Rogers, Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine. Melinda M. Rogers, Founder, Rogers Ventures and Vice Chair, Rogers Control Trust. Charles Noir, Lead Director. Senior corporate officers of Rogers Communications are Guy Lawrence, President and Chief Executive Officer. Bob Berner, Chief Technology Officer. Frank Bolban, Chief Strategy Officer and AMP, Interim President, Consumer Business Unit. Jacob Glick, Chief Corporate Affairs Officer. Dale Hooper, Chief Brand Officer. Nitin Kawale, President, Enterprise Business Unit. Deepak Khandelwal, Chief Customer Officer. David Miller, Chief Legal Officer and AMP, Secretary. Rick Brace, President, Media Business Unit. Jim Reed, Chief Human Resources Officer. Tony Staffieri, Chief Financial Officer.